I am very excited to introduce our next speaker into the Asian American Pacific Islanders ERG series. And I'm going to turn it over to Verlyn Francisco, to introduce our speaker properly and talk more about this series.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the Asian American and Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group Speaker Series. The series is co-hosted with the NOAA Library and highlights the contributions of NOAA's AAPI personnel in support of NOAA's mission of science, service, and stewardship. Today, we have Dr. Stefan Bieda, who is Chief of the National Weather Service's Severe Fire Public and Winter Weather Services Branch. Dr. Bieda's distinguished career in meteorology and the U.S. Air Force spans 15 years, and additionally, he is active in the American Meteorological Society and serves as the chair of the Weather Analysis and Forecasting Committee, and is also the editor of the Journal of Weather and Forecasting. So it is definitely the AAPI ERG's honor to have Dr. Bieda here to speak with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Bieda.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this series and to be able to present on some of the wonderful work that we're doing within the National Weather Service's 4 programs that you spoke of. So one of the things about the National Weather Service programs is that each and every one has a service program manager, and I just want to take a moment to highlight some of the distinguished folks here who have been leading these efforts for the National Weather Service. Some of them have been in the role for over 2 decades. Newest in the role is Eric Galat. He is the Winter Weather Services Program Manager. We recently hired him about 6 months ago. Kevin Laws is currently acting as the Severe Weather Services Program Manager. He's out of NWS Birmingham, Alabama, and is a place that is no stranger to severe weather. In fact, unfortunately, his area is very much prone to tornado outbreaks, and we're happy to have his services with us. Kim McMahon is a Public Weather Services Program Manager. She has been in this role for quite a few years, and you may see her around within our agency working on efforts such as extreme heat through NIHIS and the Climate Program Office efforts that are led on the OAR side. And we do have a lot of work on her end that I'll also go over during the course of this presentation. And last but certainly not least is Heath Hockenberry, who is the Fire Weather Services Program Manager. He has been in this role for over 2 decades. He's actually the first and only Fire Weather Services Program Manager that the agency has had. And he helps lead our incident meteorology program amongst many other things, including coordination of newer technology efforts and whatnot with agencies such as OAR and NESDIS. And so it's been an honor to be able to work with him on these efforts. One of the biggest things that the Weather Service is currently embarking on is known as a transformation effort. And this effort is identified as the KENS 10. The reason why it's called KENS 10 is because our director is Ken Graham, and he has been working priorities and action strategies for the agency. Having been in this role now for over 2 years, we've actually seen some accomplishments, some of which you may have heard about, including the adoption of a new NWS chat interface known as Slack. We're currently working on and have improved the interfaces on our web pages for radar data, a highly popular and in-demand product from the Weather Service. And then the next one was establishing what is known as the Change Management Unit and helping get the governance process started there. So what are some of the things that we're working on? So there's this program called the Spot Forecast Program. And this is critical for fire weather and emergency management functions where somebody might need a specific forecast at a location for an incident that might be occurring, such as a hazmat release or wildfire that may have just started and there's no teams yet managing that. So there's a lot of demand for weather information that is very quick, very localized, that can be utilized for helping address that incident. There's also a lot of things that the agency can work on to improve. And so there's a group of folks that are looking for 10 quick things that can be improved within the agency as another short-term effort. And last but certainly not least in this one is the conversion of our weather interface system known as AWIPS. It's Advanced Weather Information, and I forget what the P is, but the S is definitely system, and processing system. There it is. And in AWIPS is a different version. It's kind of an older version, more that has been utilized for the last 2 or so decades. And so we're just trying to help modernize that and bring that forward. For the medium term, the Weather Service is currently working on advancing our tsunami program. One of the biggest wins that we can celebrate is that the Tsunami Warning Center has been established jointly, and we are currently working on getting that housed under the National Center for Environmental Prediction. This effort has been a long time effort. There's been a lot of international coordination that goes on with tsunami alerts and tsunami warnings, some of which you may have heard about in the East Asian regions that have unfortunately taken thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives after an earthquake has occurred. If there's anything about our webpage I can tell you is that it's a bit outdated. And so weather.gov is currently going through a modernization effort. We actually have the Department of Commerce's, or actually Office of Personnel Management, or OMB, I should say, first ever grant to be able to improve a web page on the order of a couple $1 million. And so we're currently underway right now working with contractors and programmers to help bring forward a more flexible and nimble interface for our web page. And then the rest of the things that are more long-term and strategic, the one that I'll highlight is what is known as community-centric warnings. And this effort is an effort that I help co-lead with the National Weather Service, where we are trying to adapt and change our alerts to have probabilistic information that can be actionable, ranging from minutes to days to months. And so this is going to be a huge undertaking for the National Weather Service because a lot of the alerts that we issue has been determined in social science to need changes to be easier to understand. We need to utilize plain language information, and we also need to make sure that our alerts are a bit more precise in the location that is being affected by a given weather hazard. And so on top of that, we have to make sure we're always timely and that the updates are done in such a manner that can quickly clear an area that is heavily impacted by a weather event. So looking at the service programs, here's just a couple of icons I like to show to give an overview of the things that we like to work in. So for severe, of course, we do a lot of work with lightning safety, severe thunderstorms, and tornadoes. For fire, wildland fire is definitely plenty in and of itself. Unfortunately, the Western United States is going through a rather serious wildfire outbreak at this time, and we'll go over some of the details on how the Weather Service supports that. For winter, this also is a program that has a lot of things going on all at once because there's a lot of hazards when you're thinking about winter. Is the precipitation falling as snow? Is it going to accumulate as ice on structures and power lines, or is it going to be causing blizzard conditions due to high winds and you can't see very far? So there's a lot of things that go on in the winter program that we're currently working on with our partners. And then public is kind of like the catch-all of the Weather Service, where if it isn't precipitating type hazard, it falls under the public, where we do things like air quality, extreme temperatures such as extreme cold or extreme heat, visibility products such as whether or not smoke is going to obscure an area or whether or not dense fog is going to affect you. And then finally, wind. There are storms that do occur. The High Plains is very well known for this, where clear skies, but you could have winds blowing 60, 70, 80 miles an hour due to the mountainous terrain that can bring conditions that are rather hazardous for commerce, especially 18-wheelers that tend to tip over in those type of wind speeds. So the Severe Weather Services program is quite likely one of our most highly visible. And the reason for that is a lot of people like to talk about tornadoes. They like to talk about severe thunderstorms when it comes to hail and wind. And this is the program that we help oversee for things like outlooks, where you get information that goes from 1 day to 7 days. Watches, which is when conditions are expressed to be favorable in an area for severe thunderstorms or tornadoes. And then, of course, the warning products that you often see or hear about either through a radio, your phone gets it through a weather emergency alert, or you see a crawl on the TV screen letting you know what the hazard is. And so A lot of the efforts that our program does is we're trying to facilitate the training and collaboration that's necessary to help ensure the latest and greatest of our severe weather products, services, and initiatives are employed to help save lives and property from these sorts of events. In addition, more recently, the National Weather Service has hired and is starting to work with social science to be able to understand how people interact with information. And this is an effort that's not just specific to Weather Service. OAR also has social scientists, and so some of the other NOAA agencies are also starting to employ this way so that we can understand how an end user takes in information, whether it's weather, whether it's climate, or anything else. There's multitude of ways. And then one of the initiatives that the Weather Service has also embarked on is to be able to translate our products into the one of the more predominant languages of the area, such as Spanish, Mandarin Chinese, Tagalog, amongst others, depending upon the communities that are being affected. And then finally, we also develop and disseminate the preparedness and safety materials, some of which that I'm showcasing here on the right side of the screen, where you can see that we're talking about tornadoes in Spanish, or visualizing through what you see on social media about the tornado warning, or where there's a polygon drawn in an area that's impacted, or what safety information you can also do to be prepared for nighttime tornadoes. And then last thing that you see there on the image on the bottom left is our Storm Ready initiative to make sure that communities understand what it will take to be resilient in the face of severe weather events. So here I have a couple of the products that the Weather Service does issue. I spoke earlier about convective outlooks. That's that product on the top left where we highlight portions of the country, whether there's a general risk of thunderstorms all the way up to a high risk of thunderstorms. Unfortunately, this recent severe weather season was considered one of the most active in quite some time, and a lot of the higher categories made appearances. We have heard and been notified of efforts where if there's a moderate or high risk that's underway, that communities, governors, schools take action based upon that information. And so this has been a huge advance compared to about 10, 20 years ago, where we could say that there's a high risk of severe thunderstorms, and usually people just wait for the weather event to occur. And kids are unfortunately finding themselves in spaces where severe weather could cause the most damage. Mesoscale discussion. This is a product that's puts out for the Storm Prediction Center that's more for the highly acute user that's aware of weather information to understand how the threat is evolving in a given area. Usually decision makers such as emergency managers and government officials use this to get a sense as to whether or not they need to posture their emergency management operations center, or whether or not they need to prepare transportation in the area, highways, schools, and what have you, concerts for a possible hazard that could be coming into the area. The example here shown is about increasing threat of a tornado. When we issue watches, you likely have seen these or heard about these severe thunderstorm or tornado watches, is when we highlight an area and indicate if a thunderstorm gets going or the environment is supportive of conditions that will allow for these storms to grow and become dangerous to communities. That's where the watches tend to be issued. And of course, when the warning has happened, that means that we are talking about a situation where the situation is either imminent or is occurring. And then there's layers of types of warnings. More recently, the emergency tag, where we see it, it's causing a lot of damage, and it is potentially going to take lives if you don't take action. So some of the training collaboration that we do work with a lot of offices and regional centers about severe weather for training and collaboration. We work with the Storm Prediction Center. We also work with the National Severe Storms Lab of OAR to put together the latest products. A lot of their research is transition to operations. And so one of the things that our office does is we try to anticipate some of that research and work with partner agencies and engineers, amongst others, to help us understand what it will take to take what is being developed and put it into operational practice. There are many cooperative institutes across NOAA that do research on severe weather, or as well as many different weather types. There are also some who are hired as contractors that work alongside our trainers and researchers within the varying agencies in NOAA. The Warning Decision Training Division is the training arm of the National Weather Service when it comes to radar operations. And each and every year, hundreds of forecasters are trained, some of them having just come out of school recently, in order to understand how to work with radar in the midst of a severe weather environment and how to operate the warning programs that we use to make sure that communities can be kept safe. The Operations Proving Ground is another research to operations arm of the Weather Service where everything is almost ready to go. We just got to test it in a system that is very similar to what we have in operations and to prove that it is capable to be used in operations. And finally, there is a myriad of other entities that we work with, government agencies, including folks such as the State Department, Department of Interior, Park Service, FEMA, White House, amongst others, in order to be able to convey the threats and hazards that could be occurring and to collaborate and partner on some of these effects. So here are some of the severe weather safety and risk communication tools that we use. And our program's current focus is creating communication that is useful for vulnerable populations and communities. And our vision is to allow our warnings to evolve to this paradigm known as community-centric, where we realize that a person living in a mobile home, another person that might be in a nursing home, and a person that's working out of a well-built structure are going to necessarily need different amounts of information and lead time to be able to make their decisions to save themselves and save others in those immediate locations. So by the numbers, I indicated earlier that this recent severe weather season has been quite active. It's actually been the most active severe weather season that we've seen since 2011, which is by far the busiest season that we have on the record books. For the Weather Service, we have issued over 13,000 severe thunderstorm warnings, 300 severe thunderstorm watches, and we've received reports of over 13,600 hail and wind events across the entire contiguous United States, as well as Alaska and Hawaii. In fact, earlier this year, we saw the furthest north severe thunderstorm warning ever issued in Northwest Alaska, north of the Arctic Circle, for the first time ever on record by the NWS Alaska office. Tornado warnings, we had over 2,200 of them issued, with almost 1,300 tornadoes reported across the country. These numbers rank only second to 2011. When it comes to flash flooding, this number is likely going to jump in a big hurry after Hurricane Beryl's landfall yesterday. We had over 1,800 flash flood warnings issued by the agency, and we've received over 2,900 reports of flash floods that have occurred across the country. That is quite a bit of hazardous information to be sent out. And finally, there have been over 2,900 river flood warnings issued, which means that these rivers are actually over their banks, causing harm and damage to property and affecting communities in their areas. So to put it lightly, it has been an incredibly busy year for the National Weather Service and many of the forecasters across the country. And Fire Weather Services program, speaking of busy, is also an important critical part what we do within the National Weather Service. We provide forecast, warning, and decision support information to land management agencies, to emergency management, to air quality management, as well as to government officials and the public about what is occurring weather-wise around a fire. Fire is one of the three triangles that is utilized by firefighters in order to determine the tactics and safety that they employ when they're trying to protect communities. Unfortunately, there are fires that occur across a multitude of areas, one of which is that recently occurred in February of this year was 1.2 million acres, hundreds of square miles of land that was burned in the Texas Panhandle. And we are thankful to say that only a couple of folks were unfortunately lost to us, which is far less than could have been as a result of the efforts of the National Weather Service, emergency management, and state government officials. We began testing a new way of alerting people to help get people out of the way during this year, and we have seen a noticeable impact. Normally, a fire of that size would have seen at least an 8 to 10-fold increase in the number of people that could have been lost as a result of that. So we're very proud of the efforts that we have been doing in this space. So our customers and partners, well, we start local. Every one of your fire departments that you may have around you references the National Weather Service and the forecast that we provide. Regionally, there are also geographic area coordination centers, otherwise known as GACs, that are coordinated through the U.S. Forest Service, Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and state fire services to help move people and equipment across the country based upon how much of a threat wildland fires might pose to a given area. And then nationally, we at the National Weather Service here at headquarters have folks based out of the Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho, where they coordinate with the interagency centers at a national level and determine national preparedness efforts from there. So some of the services that we provide, a few of these you may have seen. The outlooks are generally provided by the Storm Prediction Center. Most of what people get is the red flag warnings, the fire weather watches, and even more lately, the fire warnings that we issue from our agency in order to alert people of the conditions where weather could cause a fire to spread quickly and dangerously, especially for firefighters. And when a emergency management agency or land management agency has determined that there is a fire on the ground that could pose significant threat to life and property, we issue what is known as a fire warning. We actually relay it on their behalf so that people can get out of the way. We also issue products for lightning ignited fires, and we have been lately using NESDIS satellites to send hotspot notifications to areas where fires can spread quickly, and wildland firefighting partners greatly appreciate that and the efforts that NOAA is providing in that space. So another thing that we do is we send incident meteorologists. An incident meteorologist is a highly trained individual within the Weather Service. They receive hundreds of hours of training, and they tend to dispatch to the largest of wildfires that tend to be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of acres. And they will work really long shifts to support incident management teams. And usually there are 1,000 to 2,000 individuals fighting those large fires every single day. And the incident meteorologists will tend to work 16 to 18-hour shifts across 14 days in order to provide fire safety information, help protect those high-value assets, give information that could be useful for tactical firefighting, and be a weather liaison to the public. So far this year, we have deployed 29 IMETs on these missions, 20 for wildland fires and 9 for prescribed burns, where they're trying to thin out the grasses and the trees in the area. 10-year average, we usually have 152 missions for incident meteorologists. Spot forecast is another thing that we issue. Those are the hyper-localized forecasts for a given location. And lately, we have seen a far greater rise in the number of spot forecasts that are requested. Last year alone, we issued 33,780 of those to wildland firefighters and partner agencies, which is an 83% increase from 2013 level of 18,509. So far this year, we've already issued 19,500 such forecasts, which is very close to the 10-year average, and we anticipate we're going to be above that average as a result of all the fires that we're seeing out west. Public Weather Services Program, this program, again, is all about the non-precipitation weather that occurs, such as heat, temperatures, smoke, frost, ashfall, blowing dust, air quality, and these are just a few examples. And they're also heavily involved in the National Interagency Heat Health Information System that is in partnership with OAR and other agencies. So what this program does, again, we develop and oversee the national policies, procedures, and guidelines to help with these hazards, and we work across the country and interagency in order to innovate and improve our services that we provide there. So I'm not going to go over all of this, but this is really just a quick overview of the hazards that the public program covers. You may find some that you are familiar with in your area. So to broadly speak, there are 5 different areas that we cover: extreme temperatures, visibility reduction hazards, non-convective winds, basically those winds that don't come from a thunderstorm, air quality, and health impacts. And we work very closely with a lot of partner agencies, including international partners like Environment Canada, global efforts with the World Meteorological Organization. And then we coordinate these efforts through folks like the CDC, EPA, FEMA, and of late, the White House, and in coordination for policy efforts with Congress. So our goal for the public program over the next 5 years that we have employed since I've started is to evaluate and modernize the way we do hazards and the elements that we issue, and try to reduce redundancy. There has been social science work that has indicated that people tend to get confused about the products that we are issuing, and so we're trying to help reduce that confusion. Moving forward, we hope to have sustainable progress in our efforts to do things such as evaluate the need for polygon alerts, grid-based hazards, integrate social science into the communication of our hazards and the call to action statement, and modernize the elements that we are forecasting for that are most impactful for public safety and to help save lives as a result of some of those hazards. Here are some of the current public program initiatives that we have underway. NIHIS is probably one of the bigger ones because we have a lot of collaboration with all of those agency icons that you see there. We're currently in the process of finalizing a federal government, whole federal government heat strategy. We're also recently deployed an experimental heat risk product in collaboration with the Center for Disease Control, which has been getting a lot of use this season, unfortunately, with the heat wave that's going on in the Western United States. And so we're getting feedback on that. And what this is that people have informed us that temperature, heat index, dew point temperature doesn't necessarily affect them or give them a degree of understanding that they need to take action. And so we worked with health officials to come up with an index that's very similar to what you may see for a Storm Prediction Center or others. Our most issued product so far this year for public within the National Weather Service has been definitely for wind. There's been 1,238 products issued in that space. The other one that is moving up very quickly is the heat health impact products that we are issuing. And air quality products may also start rising as a result of all the wildfire smoke that's coming in from the Western United States. And unfortunately, northern tier states are experiencing smoke impacts from Canada as well. The last program that I help oversee is the winter weather program. And if there's one thing I can say about winter weather is that it is a very complicated topic to talk about, because when you think of winter weather, sometimes a few degrees can mean the difference between rain and flooding, or a raging blizzard and not being able to get around and shutting down commerce in a community. So we're trying to help with consistent messaging, communicating the range of possible outcomes and probabilistic outputs, ranging from most likely scenarios to the worst case, and working with our partners to understand what it is that they need in order to be able to help them make their decisions and to help the public understand the impacts that may result. So some of the products that we issue, again, thank you to Katie for showing the WPC, Weather Prediction Center Heat Risk product. Weather Prediction Center also issues the Winter Storm Severity Index product. Very similar to heat risk in that, except this is for winter, where we look at all of the varying loads of information about a winter storm, because a winter storm doesn't just have snow. There's also impact from winds, ice, sleet even, and just the sheer accumulation of all of that can cause problems. And then finally, flash freeze is another important aspect of a winter storm that we are worried about. And so we have those products that are issued from our agencies for weather forecast offices. We issue watches and warnings. The list is provided there. And the Weather Prediction Center also provides probabilistic information that partners like to use and determine their thresholds so that they can make their decisions themselves. One of the more recent ones that we have brought into play is the Probabilistic Winter Storm Severity Index. This became operational in December of last year. And this provides a probability of a community or a location experiencing winter storm conditions defined as ranging from minor to extreme. And so we provide these outputs from day one, which is today, all the way out to 7 days out in 6 hour intervals. And the hyperlink is there within the presentation, weather.gov/WSSI-P. So you won't see much there right now, but when the winter season comes, that is another product that we are trying to portray. So with that, here's a collaborated winter watch experiment. And these are the statistics that we have so far for this year. It's been a down year for winter weather, but we have been very busy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my presentation. I want to thank my contributors, and we'll be standing by with any questions.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I know 30 minutes just goes by so quickly. So I want to thank our audience for attending today. This was a lot of amazing information, and I will be scrolling through those, especially that heat risk map right now. I see there are some purple spots around DC where I am located. So staying inside and staying cool, which I hope everyone is as well. But I don't see any pending questions right now. So I hope everyone is just taking note of Stephen's name and know that they can reach out to him through his NOAA email. And thank you again, Stephen. This is Stefan. Excuse me. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, and I'm going to let everybody go so we can respect time. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. Take care.